In this video, you'll learn all of the core functions of Microsoft Excel that you need to succeed as a data analyst or any other profession that uses Excel. Not only that, but you will complete an end-to-end portfolio project applying all of your skills to clean and analyze data and build an interactive dashboard. And the best part is, I'll give you all of the data that I'm working with, so you'll get to work along with me for every step of the way. This video you're about to watch is a combination of smaller Excel tutorials that I've made, but I wanted to put this all into one video so that you can watch it on your TV or whatever device without interruption. Just one final note, I did not get fancy with the editing here, so this is literally just all of my Excel videos back to back with all of the intros and outros left in. I wanted to focus on the content rather than the flash because I believe this course is excellent and exactly what you need to learn the core functions of Microsoft Excel. So with that said, let's jump right into the first tutorial. In this video, I'll show you how you can download Microsoft Excel, how to download a free version of Microsoft Excel, as well as walk you through the layout of Microsoft Excel. Welcome back to my channel. This is the first video in a brand new series where I'm going to teach you all about Microsoft Excel. This series will basically function as a Microsoft Excel course, except it will be right here for free on YouTube. Another thing that will set this course aside from many other tutorials that you'll see on YouTube is I have made this whole course to be very interactive. At the top link in the description, you can download the exact data that I'll be working with in this course. You can work along with me. You could watch it through the first time and see how I do it and then try to do it on your own. Whatever works best for you. And as a part of this video, I will show you exactly how to download it, again, so you can work along with me. But without any further ado, let's go ahead and jump into it. First, I'm going to show you how you can download Microsoft Excel, and then I'll show you how to download the data we'll be working with, and then after that, I'll walk you through the layout of Microsoft Excel. Okay, starting off, here's where you can download the full version of Microsoft Excel Desktop. In addition to getting Microsoft Excel, these memberships also come with all of these other Microsoft apps. And you have a few versions for downloading depending on what works best for you. You can download the monthly version for $9.99 a month. You can get the yearly subscription for $129.99 a year, which equates to $12.99 a month. And then you can also try the yearly version for 1 month free. So if you want to try to just learn Microsoft Excel as much as you can within a month, you could always just try this free trial. Just make sure you delete it on time. Another option is Microsoft 365 Online. With Microsoft 365 Online, you can get free versions of Word, Excel, and PowerPoint that you'll use right within your browser. The thing to take note of here is that the free version of Excel does not have all of the capabilities of the paid version, but you could definitely get started with it, and you can do many of the things that we'll be learning in this series using the free version of Excel, but again, just keep in mind that certain features may not be available. And whichever version of Microsoft Excel you want to start with, I'll have both of these links down in the description. And what's going to make this course worth the most to you is that you work along with me, and to help you with that, I have all of the data that we'll be using in this course linked right here. So all you have to do is go to the link in my description, which will bring you to this page. Then you can click on this link right here, and then just use this button to download the data. Alright, cool. Now that we've walked through all of the different downloads, let's get started. Just FYI, for every video in this series, I'll be using the paid version of Microsoft Excel Desktop, but if you want to try the free version, feel free to go ahead. So when you first open Microsoft Excel, you'll be brought to this opening page. Here you can start fresh with a blank workbook. You can select one of these different tutorials to help get you started. There's also a bunch of templates like this personal monthly budget. And then down here are Excel files that you've used and saved in the past. So if you want to continue from where you left off, this is where you will open those. For us, we'll be using the Excel that is linked in my GitHub. So we will click right here to open it up. So if you've never seen Microsoft Excel before, this is what it looks like. Over here on the left side, we have all of these different rows denoted by numbers. And then we have a bunch of columns across the top denoted by letters. Once you combine the rows with columns, you get all of these little rectangles throughout, and these little rectangles are called cells. The great thing about having all of the columns and rows labeled is that if we want to bring attention to a certain cell, we can easily do that. For example, if we want to bring attention to cell E5, we just come over here to E and then go to row 5, and here we'll find cell E5. Now, before we look into a lot of the different functions of Excel, let's bring our attention down here to the different tabs, also known as worksheets. Down here we have a lot of different tabs that contain different data that we'll be using for different videos in this series, and this is the walkthrough video, so I have it labeled walkthrough. So let's see a little bit about what you can do with these tabs. If you want to rename a tab, all you have to do is double click on it, then you can rename the tab whatever you want. If you right click on the tab, you can do a lot of different things, like you can hide the tab, and then all you have to do is right click on a different tab and you can unhide it. You can choose a tab color, so if we wanted to make this walkthrough tab green, we could do that, and if we click on another, you can see that it is now green. You can also use this right click to delete, rename, move or copy, as well as several other functions whenever you want to manage your tabs. And as I said, these tabs are also referred to as different worksheets, whereas the Excel file as a whole, so all of these worksheets combined, are commonly referred to as a workbook. Alright, back to the worksheet. So if you want to enter data or anything into a certain cell, all you have to do is click on that cell, and I'm just going to put my name right here, and then you can start entering whatever you want to type in. You can type in letters, you can type in numbers, and as we'll get to in this series, you can also do different functions to manipulate the data that you have in your worksheet. One thing to note is that if you want to change the value in one of your cells, if you just click on the cell and start typing, that will delete what you had there. So I'm going to hit Control Z to take me back to the original value. Control Z just does an undo, which you can also do up here. So if you just want to edit what you've already typed, say we need to have this number end in a 9 instead of an 8, you can click on the cell and then come up here to the formula bar, and here you could do more specific edits. So that's how you enter data into a certain cell. Now let's look back at the columns and the rows and how to manage those. The cool thing about Microsoft Excel is you can choose the width of your columns and the height of your rows. So say we don't want this column to be wider than this column header. All we have to do is click on the side of the column and we can move it back and forth to make it as wide as we want. Also, if we want Excel to just make it perfectly wide enough for our longest value, all you have to do is double click and then it is perfectly long enough for Captain America here, which is our longest column. And you can also do this for multiple columns at once if you just select the columns that you want to autofit and then double click on one of those, and now they are all the perfect size for the data within. And you can also mess with the row heights as well, but usually that doesn't come up much for me, but it's there if you need it. Alright, now let's direct our attention to this toolbar above. For the rest of this video, I'm going to briefly walk you through a lot of the things you can do in Excel by using these different tool tabs here at the top. Starting off with this Home tab, this has a lot of the functions that I use all of the time as a senior data analyst. Starting over here, you have various formatting options. You can click on a certain cell, you can make it bold, you can make it italics, you can make it underlined, you could highlight it, you could change the color of the highlight. There's a lot of great options here depending on what you're working on, so definitely get used to formatting in Excel. I'm going to go ahead and undo these so we can still read what we're working with. If you come over to this alignment tab, you can do a lot of cool things. You can center your text, you can make it more to the right. You can change the orientation if that's something that you need to do for some reason. I honestly never do that. You can wrap the text, so if you have a lot of text, this is a good way to format it where it is readable in your Excel. You can merge cells, so this puts a couple of cells together. This is what that looks like, and I'll just undo that again. Then over here we have conditional formatting, which I'll make a full video about later in this series. We have some different functions right here if we want to insert, delete, or format cells. And then over here we have some sorting and filtering functions, and again we'll get to that later in the series. Moving on to this Insert tab, this is a tab that I use a lot as a senior data analyst. You can use it to insert a pivot table, which again I'll be making a full video about later in this series. You can insert a table, you can insert charts and graphs, and those three things are what I use this tab for most. But there are also some other really useful functions over here with the line column and win-loss charts, so be sure to look into those. But pivot tables and charts are something you're likely going to use in Excel, so I highly recommend you get familiar with those, and a good way to do that is just to stay tuned in this series. Next is the Draw tab. I'll be honest, this is something I never ever use, but if you want to choose a marker and draw something in your worksheet, you're more than welcome to. Moving on to the page layout tab, here you can do a lot of changes. You can choose a theme for your Excel, you can mess with the margins, the orientation of the worksheet, as well as you can remove the grid lines if that's something that you would prefer to do or if it helps you with the project. So this is another really good tab to help you format your worksheet. Next, moving on to formulas, this is another super useful tab up here. This is a really good place to start learning about different formulas. It has it broken down through logical, text, date and time, lookup and reference. So if you just want to come in here and play around with all of these different formulas, that's definitely a good way to see what all Excel has to offer. And there's also a lot of different functions over here on the right side of the tab, but I'll be honest, I've hardly used any of these functions, so I won't go into detail here. Next is the data tab. One function that I use here a lot is this refresh. If you have a table of data or maybe a pivot table that is connected to a worksheet, sometimes whenever you add data, you need to come in here and refresh it. So that's the main thing I use on this tab, but there are many other useful functions here like sort and filter, which are also available on some other tabs. And then this text to columns can be really helpful if you check that out. Next is review. I don't use this tab a lot, but if you want to add comments to your Microsoft Excel like some people do, you can do that right here. You can also do spell checks. You can use the thesaurus if you need help coming up with different words. So definitely come and play around over here if you'd like to. Next is this view page. There's a lot of useful stuff here, but I honestly don't use this much on my job. But again, come check it out if you want to. And then last is this help tab. This is a good place to come get support if you're struggling with something. You can also check out these links to community in the Excel blog. So come play around in this tab as well. Honestly, it's a good policy just to play around with everything in Excel because once you've played around with it enough, you'll start to know where things are at once you need them. And then last is this file tab. This is where you can start a new workbook. You can open up an existing workbook. You can share a workbook with somebody else. You can save a workbook, or you can print out a workbook or just an individual worksheet. And then down here, some good account options as well as just general options for Excel. Sometimes there are certain functions of Excel that are turned on or off that you may want to mess with, and you can do all of that using this options button. Oh, one last thing you can do if you ever want to zoom in on an Excel, this might be useful to do if you're in a video meeting and it's hard for the people that you're working with to see what you're working on. You can come right down here and make the worksheet more zoomed in, or you can zoom out in the same way. But this is something that is useful from time to time, depending on what data you're working with or if you're showing data in a meeting. So it's good to know this exists. Anyway, I hope this video helps. I very well could have left something out because Microsoft Excel can do a million things and I was never going to get to them all. But whatever level of an Excel user you are, I hope that you'll tune in for the rest of this series. I'm going to cover many of the most important functions that you'll use whether you're a data analyst or in any other kind of role that uses Microsoft Excel. And whether you want to become a data analyst or you want to become a genius Excel user, I would really appreciate it if you subscribe to my channel. I post a brand new video every single week helping you become the best data analyst or Excel user that you can be. And with that, I'll see you next week. If you want to be a great Microsoft Excel user, you got to know how to use formulas. In this video, I'm going to cover basic formulas, cell references, and absolute cell references. Without further ado, let's go ahead and jump right in. Don't forget to download the data linked at the top of the description so you can work along with me. Once you have the data downloaded, come over here to the tab labeled Cells Numbers, and here we are going to look at some sales data, and we want to find out some information, including the number of cells, total volume, and average cell. Before we get to filling out these sales commissions, as well as these number of cells, let's start with very basic formulas. Using Microsoft Excel, not only are we able to use the built-in formulas created by Excel, but we can also add, subtract, multiply, and divide. So to start off any formula, we'll start it with either a plus or an equal sign. I usually start with an equals because that's just how I learned it. And let's say for some reason we want to multiply this first cell by 3. We can just click right here on the cell, and then we can use this asterisk to multiply, and then we will hit a 3 to multiply it by 3. hit enter, and there we go. Similarly, if we wanted to change from multiplication to a division, we could change the asterisk to a slash, and then if we wanted to add, we could change it to a plus sign, and then if we wanted to subtract, we could change it to a minus sign. As we can see in our formula, we are referencing a cell called D3. This is referencing the cell that is located in column D in row 3. And as you would expect, this is called a cell reference, and this tells Microsoft Excel what cell we are trying to manipulate. Now let's move on to filling in the information for our number of cells, total volume, average cell, and our cell commission for each one of these cells. Starting with the number of cells, whenever I hear that we want a number of something, that clues me in that we want to use a count, and lucky for us, Excel has a built-in count formula. So as we would start off any formula, we'll start it with a plus or an equal sign, and to use the count formula, we will just do equals count, C-O-U-N-T, and then an open parenthesis. All we have to do is click on the top cell and then drag over the remaining cells in the range and hit enter, and now we can see that there are 10 cells in our data set. Next, we want to find the total volume of cells, and in this context, we basically want to find the total dollars sold among all of the cells in our table, and to do that, we are going to use the sum formula. Similar to the count formula, all we have to do is do an equal sign and then type SUM and then an open parentheses, and then we'll just select our range of cells and hit enter. And now we can see that our total volume of cells is $407,995. Last thing we want to do is find our average cell amount, and you guessed it, to do this we will do an equal sign and then we will just type average, if we can spell that right, in an open parenthesis. Now we just come over here again and select all of our data, hit enter, and now we have our average cell. And if we click on one of these formulas we used, just like how before we had a cell reference when we were subtracting or adding 3 to this top cell, now we have cell references to a range of cells right here. So if we were to add to this, we could just come up here. So let's go ahead and add to this right now. And we'll say this is cell number 465 and it is for $40,000. We could just come right here and change this 12 to a 13. And now we have the number of cells as being 11. Now, because I don't want this cell in here, I'm just going to select this row and click delete to delete that whole row, and this changed it back to 10. Now, the last thing we want to do is find the cell's commission. And to do that, we want to multiply the cell by the commission percentage to get whatever the commission is for that cell. So to do that, we will start with an equal sign, and then we'll select the cell, and then we will do the asterisk, because again, that means multiplication, and then we'll select our commission rate and then hit enter. Now we can see that the sales commission for this cell number 342 is $1,510.56. However, if we try to drag down this cell to all these other different cells, we can see that it doesn't work, and that is because we didn't use an absolute cell reference. So once we move down to this cell, it is trying to reference G4 instead of G3, and obviously there's nothing here, so if you multiply anything times nothing, that is going to equal 0. So let's go ahead and undo that, and let me tell you a little bit about an absolute cell reference. An absolute cell reference makes it whenever we copy cells or drag them down, it will keep referring to the same cell we did in the original formula. And all we have to do to insert an absolute cell reference is put a $sign before the G as well as a $sign before the 3. Now, if we go ahead and drag these down, it will multiply each cell by that 12%. So now it works, and now we have the cell commission for every single cell in our table. A way that you can more quickly insert an absolute cell reference is to click in the cell that you are referencing. So I just put my cursor right in the middle, and then I'm going to hit on my Windows computer function F4, and that automatically will insert an absolute cell reference. Anyway, I hope this video helps. If you didn't already, be sure to go download the data so that you can try this on your own and check your answers against mine. A lot of learning Microsoft Excel, or really anything, is just building off the basics, so you want to be sure you're very good with working with these basic formulas before you move on to more complex formulas, as well as other complex functions in Microsoft Excel. And if you want to become a data analyst or an expert Excel user, I would really appreciate it if you subscribe to my channel. I post a brand new video every single week, helping you become the best data analyst that you can be. And with that, I'll see you next week. If you want to be a great Excel user, you have to know how to use conditional formulas like average if and sum if, and in this video, I'll show you how. Without any further ado, let's jump right in. As always, don't forget to download the data linked at the top of the description so you can work along with me. Okay, so for this problem, we work for a movie chain and we have different dates as well as different locations and the number of tickets sold for each of those days for each of the locations. And what we want to find is the average tickets sold, the total tickets sold, the best day, and the worst day for the East region as well as the West region. And to do this, all we need are some simple conditional formulas. Starting out, let's find the average tickets sold for the East region. To do this, all we need is the average if function. So you just do that by typing an equal sign like you do when you start any kind of formula and then type average if. And don't forget the open parenthesis. So as you can see, we have three arguments that we need for this formula. We have the range, the criteria, and the average range. It kind of works better to explain this from back to front. The average range is the range of numbers that we're going to be taking the average of. The criteria is whatever we want to use to filter the data we're finding the average of. And in this case, we're looking for the average of the East region tickets. And then the range is the range of our criteria, basically. So all of the data here in our location column. So starting out with the range, our range here is going to be all of these values in the location column. So we will just select and drag here. Next, we will add a comma. Now we need our criteria. And again, we're looking for the average tickets sold in the East region. So our criteria will just be the East, and then we'll hit a comma again. And now for our average range, we are just going to enter all of the tickets data because we are finding the average tickets for the East. And now we hit enter. And there we go. Now we have the average tickets sold for the East region. And same here for the West. Our first argument will be all of the different regional information right here. Hit a comma, select West, hit a comma, and now select all of the tickets sold and hit enter. And now we have the average tickets for the West as well as the East. Now to find the total tickets sold, this is basically the same as before, but when we see the word total, this clues me in that we want to find a sum, and for this, we want to use a sum if. And just like it was for the average if function, the first thing we're going to do is the range of our criteria. So we'll select all of the different regions. Now we're going to enter our criteria, which is the East. And then now we're going to enter the range of data we want to actually find the sum of. And now we have the total tickets sold for the East region. Now, same thing for the West. Let's select all of our regional data. Let's select our criteria, which is West. And then now let's just enter all of our tickets sold. And now we have the total tickets sold for both the East and the West. Now we want to find our best day of sales for the East region as well as the best day of sales for the West region. And to do that, we are going to use the max ifs function. Now that we're going to be using this max ifs formula, it's a good time to point something out. For some formulas like the average if, you can see we have two options. We have the average if as well as the average ifs. The average if is just like we showed, where you can find the average of a range of cells for some kind of condition. The only difference with the ifs is you can find the average of a range of cells for multiple conditions. Honestly, I never do this for multiple conditions, so you could look up a different YouTube video that gets into that a little bit more, but usually I stick to the average if, but for some functions like the sum ifs, like we're about to use, you just have the sum ifs formula, but again, it works the exact same way unless you add additional criteria. Now back to using our max ifs formula. As we can see, there's a small change just in the order of our arguments, but luckily Excel tells us right here, so it's not something you have to worry about. So the first thing we want to find here is our max range. So this is actually going to be the tickets sold this time, and then we'll hit a comma. Next is our criteria range, and range clues me in that we're looking in for the range of our criteria, not the single criteria that we're going to apply. hit a comma. And then last is our criteria. And as you can see down here, you can add multiple criteria ranges and criteria. But for this, we're just going to use one, and we're looking just for the East best day. Now we will hit enter. And there we can see our best day in the East was 301 tickets sold. Now doing the same thing for the West, let's go ahead and enter in our max range. Let's go ahead and enter in our criteria range. And then we just enter in our criteria, which is West. And now we can see that the best day in the West was 510 tickets. Last, you might have guessed this, we will be using the min-ifs formula. So first we will put in our range of tickets for our min range. Now we will put in our criteria range. And now we will enter in our East region, which is our criteria. Hit enter, and we can see our worst day in the East was 175 tickets. Now doing the same thing for the West, let's go ahead and put in our min range. Let's go ahead and put in our criteria range. And then we can select West. You could also type in West if you wanted to, but we will just go ahead and select it here. And we can see our worst day in the West was 392 tickets. And there you go. Now you know how to use the average if, the sum if, the max ifs, and the min ifs. And then this applies to any other conditional formulas. So you should be good to go on all of those. Anyway, I hope this video helps. Be sure to check out the rest of this playlist if you want to become a great Excel user. And whether you want to become an Excel wizard or a data analyst, I would really appreciate it if you subscribe to my channel. I post a brand new video every single week, helping you become the best data analyst that you can be. And with that, I'll see you next week. If you want to be an Excel wizard, you have to know how to use at least one lookup formula, and in this video, I'll show you how to use the X lookup formula. Without further ado, I will go ahead and jump right in. Don't forget to download the data at the top of the description so that you can work along with me. So for this problem, we have all of these items in our shopping cart, and for some reason we don't have the prices with them, but we need to get the prices from this items table over here. And to do that, we are going to be using the X lookup formula. The X lookup formula allows us to pull data from another table into our table based on some kind of criteria, and in this case our criteria are the items in our cart. So to start off using the X lookup formula, we will do an equal sign, and then we'll type X lookup, and then an open parenthesis. As you can see, there are a lot of different arguments you can use in the formula. However, you only need to use these first three, so those are the three we are going to focus on the most. First is our lookup value. Our lookup value is the value that we're trying to find in this table that will help us return the information we're looking for. And in this case, our lookup value is eggs, and don't forget the comma. Next is our lookup array. This is the range of values where we are trying to find our lookup value. Again, this case is eggs. So our lookup value will be all of the items listed here in column H, and I'm just going to go ahead and select column H as a whole. Last is the return array. This is the array of values we want to return to our original table for wherever there is a match. And here we are wanting to return the price information, so we will select column I. And if you wanted to, you could insert an additional argument if your item is not found. So if we had an item in this table that it couldn't find, we could just put item could not be found in table. But again, this is as far as we'll go. So we will go ahead and hit enter. And as we can see, it worked, even though this isn't in currency format yet. So let me go ahead and change this to currency. But as we can see, it worked. Now to find the additional values for the items in our cart, we'll just select the bottom right corner and drag that down here. And now we have the values for all of the different items in our cart. Now to find the total value of our cart, we will just use a simple sum formula and then select all of our prices. And now that we can see, our total cart value is $30.14. A couple other options for lookup formulas are VLOOKUP and index match, but honestly, I never use either of those. XLOOKUP is what I use every single time on my job as a data analyst, so if you can really get the XLOOKUP down, you'll be good to go. Anyway, I hope this video helps. Be sure to check out the other videos in this series if you want to become a great Excel user. And whether you want to become an Excel genius or a data analyst, I would really appreciate it if you subscribe to my channel. I post a brand new video every single week helping you become the best data analyst or Excel user that you can be. And with that, I'll see you next week. If you want to be a top tier Excel user, you have to know how to use logical formulas. And in this video, I'm going to show you how to use the F formula. And in this video, I'll show you how to use the if formula in Excel. Without any further ado, I will go ahead and jump right in. Don't forget to download the data linked at the top of the description so that you can work along with me. So for this problem, we are a teacher and we are grading papers that were turned in by our various students. As you can see right here, we have all of their grades as well as their turned in dates, but we also want to find out if they turned them in on time and the due date was 3/18. And if they didn't turn them in on time, we are going to deduct 10 percentage points from their letter grade. And to find this out, we are going to be using the if formula. And to start that, we will just do an equal sign and then type IF for if and then an open parentheses. So basically how this formula works is we do some kind of a logical test and then we return one value if this is true and then we return a different value if this is false. And this will make a lot more sense if we just jump right in. Before we get started, what we are trying to do here is we are going to return yes if the paper was turned in on time, which means it was either on the due date or before, and then we will return no if it was turned in late. So our logical test is going to be if the date they turned this in is less than or equals to the due date, because that would say they turned it in either on time or early. That is going to be our logical test, and then we will put a comma. And what we want to return if it is true is yes. So we are going to use double quotations and then just type yes. It doesn't have to be in all caps, but that's what I'm doing here. Don't forget to close your quotations and then hit a comma. And then just like before, we want a value if it is false. So if they turned it in late, we are going to use open quotations again, but we're going to type no, and we'll even add an exclamation point. Close the quotations and hit enter. And as we can see, this looks like it works because this person submitted it before the due date, so it looks good so far. And now before we drag down this formula to the other cells, we do need to make this due date an absolute cell reference. And to do that, we will just click right here in the middle of the cell reference and hit function F4. You can also just manually put the dollar signs before the K and the 3. This makes it an absolute cell reference. If we didn't do this, once we drag this cell down like we will in a minute, it would start to reference these blank cells, which obviously we don't want to do. So now that we've done that, we can just drag this down to these other cells. And as we can see, everybody in this list submitted their paper on time except for this student, Alex Freeberg. So that is going to be the one person who gets a deducted score. So their original score was 42%. So we're going to make this 32%. And if your data isn't already in percentage format, you could just select these range of cells and then hit percent right here, and that will change this to percentages. For everybody else, we are just going to pull in their original score. Let's do that for these last two people as well. And there you have it. Now we know which students turned in their papers on time, and then we have the final grades for their papers, including the deduction for this one delinquent student. Anyway, I hope this video helps. Be sure to check out the other videos in this series if you want to become a great Excel user. And whether you want to become an Excel genius or a data analyst, I would really appreciate it if you subscribe to my channel. I post a brand new video every single week helping you become the best data analyst or Excel user that you can be. And with that, I'll see you next week. If you want to be a great Excel user, you have to know how to use text formulas to clean and format data. In this video, I'm going to show you how to use many of the common text formulas that I use on the job as a senior data analyst. Before we get started, don't forget to download the data that is linked to the top of the description. And once you've downloaded the data and opened it up, come over here to the Personal Info tab. As you can see, we have a lot of personal data. Be sure to note that this is not real data. We have some funky looking names right here. We have some phone numbers and we have some addresses. Starting off by looking over here at the names, we can see that all of these names are capitalized and formatted in different ways than the others. But often when we're working with data, we want to have all values in the same column with a similar format, so let's look at a few formulas that will help us do this. First, let's look at upper. You can start the upper function just by typing an equal sign like you do for any formula, and then upper, upper, in an open parenthesis. Now, all we have to do is select the cell that we want to apply the formatting to and hit enter. And now we can see it changed every letter in the cell to uppercase. And now if we just drag this down, it will do the same thing with all of the other values. Similarly, as you might have guessed, lower is going to work the same way, except it's going to change all of the letters to lowercase. And now you can see Elijah Butler is all in lowercase. We can go ahead and drag that down, and now we have all of the different names in lowercase. And then last is proper. Often when we're working with names or any kind of specific noun, we're just going to want to capitalize the first letter in each word, and that's exactly what the proper formula does. So as you can see, just like you would read in a book or see anywhere, it has the first letter of my first name capitalized and then the first letter of my last name capitalized. And then if I drag that down, that does it to each one of the names listed in our table. There's actually one other formula for these names I want to do, but I forgot to put it in our table. So we are just going to click and drag on these cells. Then we're going to right click and hit insert. And we're going to shift cells to the right. And here we are just going to type trim. For this trim function, what it does is it removes all of the spaces from the left and from the right of your word. So it doesn't remove the spaces in between, but just those to the left and to the right. Whenever I do this to my name, it doesn't look any different because I didn't have any excessive spaces. But if we go ahead and drag this down, now we can see that this Avery Smith is more formatted like the others because it had a bunch of spaces to the left as well as to the right. And if we come over here and click on it, we can see that right here. But while these examples may seem pretty simple, all four of these formulas that we just looked at are incredibly helpful when it comes to formatting data. Next, let's look at these phone numbers, and I'm going to zoom in here a little bit just so it's easier to see. And for some reason, we're just interested in the area code of these phone numbers, and to pull that, all we need to use is the left formula. The left formula pulls a specific number of characters from a string. So if we want to pull the left 3 numbers, because the first 3 numbers are the area code, we will just first put the cell that we are trying to apply the formatting to, hit a comma, and since we just want the first 3, we will type a 3, and hit enter, and there we go. And let's go ahead and drag this down. And now we have all of the area codes of all of the people in our table. And then similarly, for some reason, we're just interested in the zip codes of our addresses. Just like what we did there to find the area codes, we are going to do the same thing, except we are going to use the right formula. The right formula, just like the left formula, pulls a certain number of characters that you specify, but as you could probably guess, this formula pulls them from the right side of the string. So all we have to do is insert the cell that we want to apply the formatting to, hit a comma, and since we want the zip code, we want the last 5 characters, so we will hit a 5, hit enter. Let's go ahead and drag this down. And there we go. Now we will zoom out a little bit, and now we have applied all of the formatting that we wanted to our table of data. Anyway, I hope this video helped. If you want to become a great Excel user, feel free to go check out all of the other videos on my Excel playlist. And if you want to become a data analyst, I would really appreciate it if you subscribe to my channel. I post a brand new video every single week, helping you become the best data analyst or Excel user that you can be. And with that, I'll see you next week. One of the most powerful functions in Excel that everybody should know how to use is pivot tables. And in this video, I'll show you exactly how to use them. Before we get started, don't forget to download the data that is linked to the top of the description. And once you have the data downloaded and opened, come over here to our tab that's labeled Employees. As you can see, we have a table of data for a small company that includes the employee ID, employee name, department, role, yearly salary, years with company, and 2024 grade. And what we want to do is we want to break down a couple of the variables like yearly salary and their 2024 grade by department and by role. And a great way to do this is with a pivot table. To insert a pivot table, all we have to do is select all of our data, and then we're going to come up here to the Insert tab, hit Pivot Table, and then we are going to make sure Add This to Data Model is checked. And then we have the option to add this pivot table to a new worksheet or an existing worksheet. To be honest, I usually just use a new worksheet because that's cleaner and that's what works for me. Before we get started, let's go ahead and rename our tab. Let's go ahead and double click right here, and we will just call this tab Employee Pivot. So there are actually a million different things that you can do with pivot tables, and I'm not going to try to cover them all, but after this video, you'll know how to create a pivot table like we just did and how to use it in common ways that I do as a senior analyst. So right here in this block, this is where we're going to start building. If we click somewhere else in the worksheet, it makes the pivot table editor go away. So if we wanted to edit data somewhere else in this worksheet, that's how we would do it. But obviously for this video, we want to build a pivot table, so let's make sure that we've selected a cell right here. If you look over here to the right to these pivot table fields, here you'll be able to find all of the columns that we have from our table, and below there you'll be able to see 4 boxes labeled filters, rows, columns, and values. Now that we've looked at the layout, let's just jump right in. Let's say that we want to find the total yearly salary for each department. The first thing we're going to do is find department in our pivot table fields, and we're going to select it and we're going to drag it to rows. And now if you look over here to the left, you'll see executive, HR, IT, and marketing. Now all we have to do is we will select yearly salary and we will drag it to values. And now we can see the total yearly salary for each one of our departments. And just for some formatting, I'm going to select all of these cells and I'm going to hit this $sign, and then I'm going to remove the decimal places. That way it's formatted more correctly. So this is the total salary spent for each department. So we could even change the name of this column right here and say total salary by department if we wanted to. We can go ahead and pull this to the right. But there's also some different measures that we can do here. While we're still selected on our pivot table, if we come back down here to our values and click this little arrow, here we can select value field settings. Here we have a lot of different ways that we can look at this. We could look at count, which counts the number of rows. So this would give us the number of salaries listed in our table by department. We have the average, that would give us the average salary for each department. The max and min, which would give us the most or least yearly salary, and then there's several other options as well. Just for the heck of it, let's select average and see what our average salary is by department. And as we can see, it looks like our executives get paid a lot more than everybody else. Typically what you would find in a company, usually you're going to find that the CEO, CTO are going to be the highest paid. And then sadly, we can see that HR is the lowest paid. And in case we had more values and it wasn't as easy to see where the most salary and the least salary was, all we have to do is right click on one of these values, come and hover over sort, and then we will choose largest to smallest. And now this makes it a little bit more visually obvious about which department gets the highest paid and which is the lowest. Now there are other ways to do this, but usually if I want to create another pivot table, all I do is select the first one, Control C to copy, and then I will click Control V to paste it. And now I can start building something else to look at another number. Instead of salary, for this one, we are going to look at their 2024 grade. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to get rid of the yearly salary from our values. And then we're going to click and drag the 2024 grade into values. This automatically created a sum, but adding these up doesn't really tell us much. So let's come down here to value field settings again. And once again, I'm going to choose the average. Let's go ahead and sort this from largest to smallest again. Again, that just makes it a lot easier. And as we can see, the executives are rated a 5. I would guess they probably rated themselves. IT is a 5. HR averages a 4, and then marketing sadly averages a 3. This is still formatted to currency. Let's go up here and select number instead because this is not money. One other thing I'm going to show you that's incredibly useful is if we want to look first at the department and what the average salary and average grade was, but then we want to dig a little bit deeper and see what the average salary and average grade is for each role. To do this, let's go ahead and select this pivot table, and we will come down here to role, and we're going to also put it in rows, but we're going to put it below department. So now we can see the average salary for each role within each department, and then if we collapse all of these, we're able to once again see the average salary by department. So this is really great because we may see, oh, marketing makes $116,000 a year on average for the average employee. Let's dig in here a little deeper. And obviously we don't have a lot of data here to work with, but if we were working with hundreds or thousands of rows of data, this really makes things easier to find insights and make decisions, whatever you need to do. Now we'll do the same thing over here. Let's pull role down here below department. And just like before, we're able to dig in a little bit deeper. So as we noted before, we can see that marketing is the lowest. So if the CEO is looking at this table and they want to see why is marketing the lowest, they could click here and be like, okay, our managers have a 4. That's pretty good, but our employees are only getting an average ranking of a 3. Maybe that means that our manager is not very good at hiring. They're just good at their own job, and maybe that's something we need to dig into. I'm not going to dig into this columns box because I hardly use it, but if you were wanting to dig in, you're able to create columns as well as rows. Usually I don't think you want to do them at the same time except for specific circumstances because as you can see it gets really confusing. But this is another useful function to know, but again, I never use it. I just use values, rows, and filters. And with that said, let me show you one last example of how you might use a filter. Coming back to our data, let's say that we want to look at the grades again, but this time we want to filter and only look at people that are over $150,000 in salary, because if they're making $150,000, we expect a lot more of them than we do of the lower paid employees. All we have to do over here is we will pull yearly salary into the filters, and now we can see there is a new box that popped up right here. We can select this down arrow and we're going to click select multiple items, and here we can filter for whatever salaries that we're looking for. There's other quicker ways usually to filter, but since we just have a few rows of data, we will just manually sort out everybody that doesn't make $150,000 a year. And now we can see that our average grade for people that make at least $150,000 a year is a 5. And as we can see, it also bumped all of these numbers up. And as the owner of the company, if we're at least hitting a 4 in every department for people that are making at least $150,000, we'll take it. Anyway, I hope this video helped. I didn't show you every single thing that a pivot table can do. I showed you how to create a pivot table and then how I commonly use pivot tables. So feel free to go check out some other videos if you want to dig deeper. And if you want to be a great Excel user, be sure to go check out all of the other Excel videos in my Excel playlist. And then if you want to be a data analyst or Excel wizard, I would really appreciate it if you subscribe to my channel. I post a brand new video every single week, helping you become the best data analyst that you can be. And with that, I'll see you next week. One of the most popular functions in Microsoft Excel is conditional formatting. In this video, I'll show you how to use conditional formatting and many of its most common uses. Before we get started, don't forget to go download the data that's linked at the top of the description of this video. And once you have the data downloaded and opened, come over to the tab labeled Clients. As you can see, we have a table of clients for a company, and we are going to use this table and apply some conditional formatting to it. For anybody that doesn't know, conditional formatting can be found on the Home tab, right here in the middle, and you can just click on conditional formatting. As it says right here, conditional formatting easily spot trends and patterns in your data using bars, colors, and icons to visually highlight important values. Once we open it up, we can see that there are several different things we can do with this. First, there are highlight cells rules. So based on the different functions that you can read on the right, it will highlight cells a certain color, whatever you tell it to. Coming down one to the top bottom rules, this is a great way to highlight the top or the bottom values in a data set. Coming down one to data bars, this is a great way to visually represent data. Coming down here to color scales, this is kind of similar. We could use this to highlight the best values as green, the middle values as yellow, and then the worst values as red. And then icon sets are also used to point out these trends, but instead of using colors, it would use arrows and colors if you want to, or many of these other icons to represent good versus bad values. And then last, you can basically create your own conditional formatting function. I honestly never use this, so we're not going to dive into this today, but feel free to check this out if you'd like. So there are two ways that I usually use conditional formatting. The first is to highlight duplicates, and the second is to highlight trends. So first, let's start with highlighting duplicates. Often, whenever you're working with any kind of data, you're going to deal with some kind of duplication. This means that the same row is entered into your table twice, and just to be honest, this is just a part of working with data, so it's something you got to get used to. So if you look closely enough at our list of clients, you might be able to see some common rows, you might be able to see some duplicates, and to find these duplicates, I'm just going to select all of our data. I'm going to come up here to conditional formatting. I'm going to choose highlight cells rules by hovering over it, duplicate values, and I'm going to fill them in with dark red text. And now we can see all of these different duplicates we have. We can see we have 2 James Cannons, or actually 3 James Cannons, as well as 2 Angela Thompsons. Now it does me no good to have these duplicates in our data set, so I'm just going to go through and delete these one by one. And to do this, all I'm doing is selecting the entire row, right-clicking, clicking delete, and then shifting the cells up. Now, if I undo this 3 times by hitting Control-Z, Control-Z, and Control-Z, another way we can remove our duplicates is selecting all of our data, coming up here to the Data tab, then we're going to come to this little icon right here that says Remove Duplicates, and then we're just going to go ahead and hit OK. And now we can see it got rid of all of our duplicate clients, and now we're good to go. So the other thing I often use conditional formatting for is highlighting trends. To get started, I want to sort the 2024 spend column from greatest to largest, so I'm going to select on the column header, I'm going to come up here to the filter icon, and then I'm going to select largest to smallest. Now I'm going to select my range of data, and probably my favorite conditional formatting use is the color scales, and I'm just going to select this green, yellow, and red. Now at one glance, we're able to see a trend. We're able to see who has spent the most money, who has spent the least money. Maybe these lower clients, we need to try to upsell more or something. That sounds kind of weird, but that's how companies think. And then we know that we need to treat these clients really good because they're who give us a lot of money. But let's hit Control-Z to undo this again. We can use any of these other functions. Maybe we want these data bars, and just like before, now we can easily spot the trends again. It basically creates a bar chart, so we could see that this top client spends like over 2 times as much as this bottom client. So this conditional formatting function is really helpful when you want to compare the rows to each other and visually see that this is over 2 times greater than this one. Let's take that back. Coming up here, we could try an icon set. We could try these arrows. I don't really love these in this context because this kind of implies to me that for this top person, Bradley Hamilton, that this number has improved over time or something, when in reality, this is just comparing all of these different numbers together. So this isn't one of my favorite uses of conditional formatting. Another common function that I often use are the top-bottom rules. Let's say that we want to look at the bottom, let's say 40% of our clients, and we want to reach out to those clients, make sure that they're getting everything that they need. And an easy way to do that was with the top-bottom. You can also choose like the top 10 and the bottom 10, so these are really helpful. And then the last thing we'll look at today is we're going to come back to the highlight cells rules, but instead of the duplicate values, I want you to notice all of these different ones that you can look at. There are greater than, so you could highlight values that are greater than a certain value. The same with less than, so highlight everything that's under a certain number. You could do between if we wanted to look at clients that spent between $40,000 and $70,000. Equal to, as you guess, would highlight values that are equal to one specific number, and then so on. So for the between one, as you would guess, we're going to look at clients that spent between $50,000 and $80,000. And then we'll hit OK. And now you can see it highlighted all of the different clients who spent between $50,000 and $80,000. Honestly, as you could probably see, I rarely change the color that we're working with, but whenever you apply any of these functions, so if we apply greater than and we wanted to highlight greater than 80,000, you don't have to fill it in with red fill and red text. You could come and put whatever color you want. You could choose dark green, dark yellow, so it's whatever works best for you. I hope this video helps. Everything that I just showed you is exactly how I use conditional formatting as a senior data analyst. And if you want to become a great Excel user, be sure to go check out all of the other videos in my Microsoft Excel playlist. And whether you want to be an Excel wizard or a data analyst, I would really appreciate it if you subscribe to my channel. I post a brand new video every single week helping you become the best data analyst or Excel user that you can be. And with that, I'll see you next week. One of the most basic functions that every Microsoft Excel user should know is how to sort and filter data. This is really helpful for data exploration and data validation, and in this video I'm going to show you how to do it. As always, before we get started, don't forget to go download the data linked at the top of the description, and once you're there, come over to the tab labeled Eastern States. There are a bunch of really helpful use cases for sorting and filtering, including sorting your date range so you can see where your dates start and stop for the data you're working with. You can filter on a certain category if you want to just observe the data within that category. And also, if you're using some kind of a function or a formula and you're getting a lot of NAs, which is what happens when your formula basically doesn't work, you can filter on those in case you need to do some manual validation or input some data. Sorting and filtering becomes super handy when you're working with a large data set because it helps you break down the data easier. But while we're just learning sorting and filtering for the first time, we're just going to be using this very basic data set, and I'm going to show you the functions of sorting and filtering here. That way you can apply it when working with bigger data sets. As you can see, we have this small data set I created that has states, their average income, and then their ranking. I pulled the average income from somewhere online. I don't know how realistic it is or not, and then I just put random rankings for each state. I'm going to zoom in here a little bit just because we're working with a small date range so we can see it a little bit better. Now let's say we're trying to decide a state to move to. There's a lot of different ways that we could dig through this data. We could apply conditional formatting to it. We could use formulas to figure out where has the best ranking and income. But for right now, we just want to explore this data. And to do that, we will be using the sorting and filtering. So all we have to do to start is we're going to click one of these column headers, and then you can either come over here to sort and filter, which is on the home tab, or I honestly usually start by just clicking it up here. And if you're using Microsoft Excel and this isn't present up here, you can right click on sort and filter and you can add it up there. So let's say first we want to look at something really basic. Let's come over here to average income and click on this arrow, and we're just going to sort it from the largest to the smallest. And as we can see right here, if we just care about where we can make the most money, maybe we want to move to Virginia. However, whenever you're looking at things like average income, there's probably a higher cost of living there. And then if income is the only thing we care about, West Virginia doesn't look to be the best place to move. Similarly, we could come over here to ranking. So again, this is just some random ranking, but let's say this was the best places to live. We could see Kentucky right here as well as Florida as the top. But if we wanted both a really good place to live and an average income, it looks like Florida, at least for this, is where we might look to move to. Obviously, some people love Florida, some people hate Florida, but at least in this exercise, that's what the data is showing. Now, similarly, from just sorting numbers, you can also sort text columns. So we could sort this alphabetically. Maybe if we had a list of all 50 states, it would make it a lot easier to scroll up and down to look at all of the different states. So that's super useful. Also, I didn't include this in the original data, but I went ahead and added a date here because I wanted to show you that you can also sort dates. You could sort oldest to newest, you can sort newest to oldest, and I often do this to verify that I'm working with the date range that I think I am whenever I'm working on the job as a data analyst. So this is a super helpful way to see where the latest date as well as the earliest date in your date range is. And then moving on to filtering, something that I do a lot is you can come right here and then select specific values. Let's say that we want to live somewhere that is a 7 or higher out of 10. We can come down here right here and we will just select 7, 8, and 10 and hit OK. And now we can see just the states that we're interested in living in just by filtering there, which took like 2 seconds. Again, this filtering function is super helpful. Let's say that you were working with sales data. This is always my go-to, and you have 3 regions. You have East, West, and North, and you want to look just at the North data and dig into that. Filtering is super helpful to let you just dig into that North data, do some spot checks, or whatever you need to do. And then finally, the last thing I'm going to show you in this video is you can actually do some more custom filters. So let's say that we want to look at a certain number, and instead of like we did before, just manually filtering, let's say we want a number that is greater than 6. So we want to look at 7 through 10 again. Let's hit OK. And there we have it. Now we have all of those states again that have a ranking of 7 or higher. Let's come back over here and look at all of these different options. There are a million different things. If you had a bunch of data, you could look at the top 10. You can do less than, between, greater than. Now coming back over here to date, if we look at the date filters, there's actually different options than when we're filtering numbers, so that can also be super helpful. And then while we're at it, if you come over here to state, you can also see there are different text filters. So this is super helpful to know. Again, there are a million different use cases for this, so I'm not going to be able to show every single use case in this video, but literally just these sorting and filtering that I've been doing today is literally how I use it on the job, and I use sorting and filtering almost every single day on my job as a senior data analyst. Anyway, I hope this video helps. If you want to become a great Excel user, be sure to go check out all of the other videos in my Microsoft Excel playlist. And whether you want to be a great data analyst or an Excel wizard, I would really appreciate it if you subscribe to my channel. I post a brand new video every single week helping you become the best data analyst or Excel user that you can be. And with that, I'll see you next week. Data visualization isn't just for Tableau and Power BI. In this video, I'll show you how to create charts and graphs in Microsoft Excel. Without further ado, let's go ahead and jump right in. Don't forget to download the data at the top of the description so you can work along with me. And once you have the data open, come over to the tab labeled Income. We're not going to be doing anything too crazy in this video, but like with any video that I create, I'm going to show you the core functions that I use on the job as a senior data analyst. As you can see, we have a lot of someone's income data. They have 4 income streams from day job, DoorDash, ghostwriting, and dog walking. They do a lot. And then over here, they have some of their ghostwriting data, including their clients, the month, and their income. First, let's focus on this first table. So I'm going to go ahead and zoom us in a little bit just so we can see better. And to start playing around with some charts and graphs, we will just come up here and click on Insert. And as you can see, there are a lot of different options. We have column charts and bar charts. We have line charts. We have pie charts. We have tree maps or hierarchy charts, I guess they are in here, as well as several other options. To start building something, what I always do is I will just select all of our data, including the headers that we're interested in, and I'm just going to click on recommended charts and see what pulls up. And as you can see from here, we have this column chart, we have this pie chart we can use, we have a bar chart, which is basically the same thing as a column, just in a different direction. And then we also have this funnel chart, but as you can see, it's kind of a weird use case for this. Now, I'll be honest, 99% of the visualizations that I use on the job are either a bar chart or a column chart, but let's start out by looking at the pie chart for this. This is covering our other table a little bit, but I'll move it once we get over to that data. I don't often like using pie charts because you have to kind of keep looking back between the legend and the actual pie chart, and that just is a little bit confusing. It's not as easy to get insights at a glance, and insights at a glance is what I like to aim for whenever I'm creating any kind of chart. But here's what we got. We can see we have all of our different income streams broken down into pie slices. It gave us the title January income, and then we have the legend down here. And the cool thing is we can mess with any of this. So let's come up here first to the title. I'm just going to select all of this title, and then let's say we want this to be nice and big. Let's go ahead and put it as a 20. And we are going to make this bold. If we wanted to, we could change the color. We could change the alignment of different things. But for this, we just want it bigger and we want it bold. Now looking at this chart, I would like it if there were data labels so we could see the exact numbers or percentages. And to do a lot of what we're going to look at, we'll come and click this plus for the different chart elements. And here we can look at and mess with different things. And let's go ahead and check data labels. Now, right off the bat, this is already more useful for me, so I know exactly how much, and I'm not just trying to guess proportions from the pie. One thing I will note is this number right here is kind of hard to read. So I'll just click and drag this right here. So that way we can see it as easy as we can these others. And that looks pretty good to me. Let's come on down here and look at our legend right here. And there are different things we can do here. We could select our whole legend, and for some reason the font isn't coming up, but let's say we want to size this up to a 12, make it easier to see. That might be a little bit too big, but I'm just trying to show what we can do. And if we want to filter our data, we can come over here and click the filter icon. Here we can filter based on what categories we want included. And as you can see, this is also interactive, so that's really handy. And then if we want to change the style of the chart, we can just come right here to chart styles and we can look at a few different versions. This one is kind of modern, so depending on the vibe we're looking for, we can come and do that right here. Now I just click Control Z a few times to get us back to where we want to be. And then the last thing that we'll look at, maybe we want these to be a specific color. Sometimes if you have a lot of categories, it will give you similar colors. So we will click once to select the pie as a whole. And then let's click again just to look at this blue. Let's come over here to fill and line. And right here, we can change it to whatever we want. Let's say we want that as red. And then that lets you change colors. Now there are a million other things over here that you're welcome to come and play with, but everything I just showed you is how I use charts and graphs on the job. Now let's go ahead and move this over here, and we're going to scroll over to the side. Let's get this way out of our view. We don't need that anymore. Now let's look at this data. So let's go ahead and select all of our data. Let's come up here and click Insert and click Recommended Charts. Now, as you can see, there isn't a really good option here. There are ways to visualize data like this, but honestly, I usually will focus on two columns that I want to look at data for. So let's see first, I want to model our data by month. So let's select the month and income data only, and then come up here and click Recommended Charts. This one doesn't really help me because I don't need to see January, February. This line chart could be useful if I fixed it a little bit. If I got it where it just had one January and one February, that would be a good representation of looking at the data over time. However, at least of these recommended charts, this one looks the best to me. So we have the sum of income by month. I don't really care for it to say sum of income, so let's get that out of here. Let's go ahead. I usually will make the chart title a little bit bigger so it stands out. We'll make that bold. Next, I'm going to come here and I'm going to click on our bars. Since we're looking at income, I want to look at that as green because income is good and money is green. So that looks pretty good to me. Now I'm going to come and select our x-axis right here. Let's make this just a little bit easier to see. Maybe I got to share my screen later, so I want to make sure everyone that I'm looking at this data with later is able to see that. And let's do the same thing right here. And there we go. Within just a few clicks, I was able to create a great chart here to show the income growth by month. And if I want to get really fancy, there are, again, a million different things I can do. However, if I just need to have a chart to put on a PowerPoint or something, this is literally all I do on my job. I actually see that for some reason it created a new sheet for this chart. So let me come back over here to income And now I want to look at the data by client instead of by month. And to do that, I'm going to select all of the client data, and then I'm going to hit Control. I'm on a Windows computer. I think you can do this with Command on a Mac, but I'm going to select my first column, hit Control, and then I'm going to select all of the income column. And that's a really good tip to know. If you want to select two different data ranges, holding Control will allow you to do that. And actually, now that I've selected this, I see that we have a couple of typos here. It says accounting instead of accounting, so let's go ahead and fix that. And I bet there's been other typos in this Excel series, so be sure to go check out all of my other videos. So let's go ahead and select this data again, and then come over here to the Insert tab and look at the different charts. I think a tree map here could be cool, but again, I almost always just go with the bar chart. And again, I'll usually just go with this recommended chart. So let's look at a bar chart for this time. And as you can see, now we can really easily look at who is our more popular client, so where we're getting the most of our money. And we can see here with Bill's Accounting, then we get Brunch Pals, Data Dude Consulting. That could be what I called my company if I had a data consulting company. So let's come up here, let's format our title again. We'll just come over here to home. Let's make this an 18. Let's make it bold, and why not? Let's go ahead and make this green. We really love the color green here. And then once again, our axes are small, so let's go ahead and bump these up a little bit. We'll make, okay, that's a little bit too big. Let's make that a 10. We can come over here, let's make this a 10 as well. And then just like before, we want to have data labels so we can actually see it. And as you can see, there are actually different options. If we wanted it to be on the inside for certain ones, we could do that. But we'll go ahead and leave it on the outside end, and that looks pretty good to me. And again, depending on what I'm working with, maybe there's a certain color scheme I want to go with. Maybe there's a better way to visualize data, but I'm telling you, bar and column charts are my go-to. They are really mostly what you need. And then for specific use cases, a pie chart can be really good. You can check out a tree map. I know before we had seen that funnel chart. That might be good if you're analyzing a marketing/sales funnel. Feel free to come over here and check out all of these different charts. For certain use cases, a pie chart might be useful, a tree map might be useful, but most of the time, a bar chart or a column chart are my go-tos, and I think they'll get the job done for you as well. Anyway, I hope this video helped. If you want to become a great Excel user, be sure to go check out all of my other Excel videos in my Microsoft Excel playlist. And whether you want to be a great data analyst or an Excel wizard, I would really appreciate it if you subscribe to my channel. I post a brand new video every single week helping you become the best data analyst or Excel user that you can be. And with that, I'll see you next week. If you want to be a great Excel user, you have to know how to work with dates. In this video, I'll show you a few popular date formulas to help you out. Without any further ado, let's jump right in. As always, don't forget to download the data linked at the top of the description so you can work along with me. And once you have the data open, come to the tab labeled Refunds. As you can see over here, we have a table of sales data, including the sale ID, the sale date, delivered, and the days sent sale. And then if you come over here to the right, you can see we have a rule. If delivery takes longer than 20 days, issue a refund. Let's size that up a little bit so you can see it. If you downloaded the data, you won't have any sell dates here because I will be working with this data a different day than you are, but feel free to put in your own dates or just put in the same dates that I have right here. Just know that when we get to the days sent sell, you'll get some different outcomes than I do. So basically we want to see how long it's been since each sell from the sell date until today. That way we know if it's been at least 20 days and someone hasn't gotten their delivery yet, we know if we need to issue them a refund. This kind of gets into what I do most of the time when I'm working with dates, and that is taking the difference between two dates. One example of this might be you want to find the difference of time between when an order was created and when the product was shipped. But regardless of the circumstance, I can almost guarantee at some point you're going to want to find the difference between two dates. The cool thing is, all you have to do to find the difference between two dates is to subtract the earlier date from the later date. And to do that for this problem, we are going to use the today function. The today function is very simple. All you have to do is put today and then an open and close parentheses, and then we'll automatically populate with today's date. But again, for us, we aren't quite done. We want to find the difference between the sell date and today's date. So all we have to do is subtract the sell date from today's date. Let's go ahead and hit enter. And as you can see, sometimes this might come out in a weird format, but since we are trying to find a numerical value, the days since sell, let's just come up here to our format tab and we are going to make this a number. Now all we have to do is drag this down, and now we have the days since sell for each of these. Now to answer our question if a refund should be issued, we can easily come over here and see that there are 3 orders where the item has not been delivered. However, it's been at least 20 days since the sell. So we're going to give refunds to these 3 sell IDs. Normally, you probably won't be using the today formula. So just to be ultimately clear, let me show you if we were just subtracting any dates, it's exactly the same. We will subtract the earlier date from the later date, hit enter, and then we get the same answer. But again, for this problem, it was easier just to have the today in our formula. Now what I've just shown you is 95% of how I use formulas to work with dates, but let me show you a couple other formulas that might be helpful. Now let's assume we want to find the number of months between today's date and the sell date. To do that, we are going to use the date diff function or formula. So for this one, first we're going to enter the first date. Next we're going to enter the today formula. Remember, you got to have an open and close parenthesis. And now for our last argument, since we want to find month, we will just put a capital M between 2 parentheses or 2 quotation marks and hit enter. Okay, this formula doesn't actually like that we are using the today formula, so let me really quickly come down here and just do the today. So that will give us today's formula. So now let's come back up here, and again, we're going to put in our first date, let's put in our second date, and now we're going to put M in double quotations and hit enter. Now, as you can see, this gave us the number of months, but let's go ahead and turn this one into an absolute cell reference by hitting function and then F4. And now if we pull this down, we can see that it actually just rounds down to the nearest month. There might be a situation where this is useful, where you just want to see the month rounded down between 2 dates, but let me show you a couple of other options. Next, I'm going to show you the year frac formula. All you got to do is type year frac after the equal sign and then an open parentheses. Now, if we put in our 2 dates, let's first put in the sell date, and then let's see if this one will let us use the today's date. Okay, it still doesn't like that, so let's come back here and let's put this here instead. So this one gives us the fraction of the year, and again, let me come up here and make this an absolute cell reference. So as you can see, this gives us the part of a year that are between the 2 dates. All of these are obviously very small fractions because all of these are like less than a month. So the biggest number is basically 1/12. But we can also use this to find the number of months or the number of weeks. So if we want to find the number of months, all we got to do is take this number and multiply it by 12 because there are 12 months in a year. And now we have the number of months in a fractional form. So that first formula, the date diff, only rounds down, but you can use this if you want to find the fraction of a month it's been between, for us, the sell date and today's date. And if you wanted to, you could even do this all in one formula. You could just put an asterisk and then a 12. And let's go ahead and change this back to a number and pull this down. Now it messed with this H column, but now we have the number of months between the 2 dates to the nearest fraction, and you can come up here and mess with the decimal places as much as you want. If you want to learn more about different formulas, you can come over here to the Formulas tab and click on Date and Time, and here is a good place where you can just play around, look at all of these different formulas. Again, I haven't used many of these. Most of the time when I'm working with dates, I'm literally just subtracting one date from another to find the days in between, or I can convert that to weeks, months, years, whatever I need. But come over here and check it out just so you know what's available to you. Anyway, I hope this video helps. If you want to become a great Excel user, be sure to go check out all of the other Excel videos in my Excel for Beginners playlist. And whether you want to be a great Excel user or a data analyst, I would really appreciate it if you subscribe to my channel. I post a brand new video every single week, helping you become the best data analyst or Excel wizard that you can be. And with that, I'll see you next week. As a senior data analyst, I use Microsoft Excel every single day. And in this video, I'm going to show you 5 functions that I use all of the time to boost productivity. Without further ado, let's go ahead and jump right in. As always, don't forget to download the data linked at the top of the description so you can work along with me. And once you're there, come over to the tab labeled Extras. So far in my Microsoft Excel playlist, I've shown you how to use many functions that you'll need as a data analyst or any kind of job that uses Excel, including formulas, conditional formatting, and pivot tables. And in this video, I'm going to show you 5 more functions that didn't quite need their own video, but I use these all of the time and you should definitely know them, again, for any job that uses Microsoft Excel. If you've downloaded the data and have been working along with me during this series, you know usually I've had all of the data prepared ahead of time. But for this video, I wasn't for sure what all I was going to include, so I didn't have most of this data prepared. So either feel free just to watch along, or you can pause and create the data as I've created as we go along. Let me go ahead and zoom in a little bit since we'll be working with one of these sections at a time, and let's start with this text to columns section. Text to columns is a super helpful function that allows you to split up text from a single column into multiple columns. For example, if you look here, we have a bunch of city and states within this one column, but for what we're going to be using this data for, it would be really helpful if we had the cities in one column and then the states in another column. So all we have to do this is we're going to select all of our city states, then we're going to come up here to the data tab, and then we're going to click on text to columns. There are 2 options here. There is delimited and fixed width. I think 90+% of the time you'll be going with delimited, so we're going to choose that. Basically, delimited means that we have all of these different delimiters that might separate the text that we're looking to break up. You might have commas that are separating, you could have semicolons, you could have tabs. But if you look here, we have our cities and states separated by a space. So in this problem, a space is going to be our delimiter. Now we're going to click Next. Here you can choose your data format if that's going to change. For us, we will just leave it as general. And now we want to choose where our destination is going to be. And that's going to be the first cell where we're going to paste our data, and for us that's going to be right here in C5. All we have to do now is hit finish, and now we have all of our cities in one column and all of our states in one column. Next, let's move on to concatenation. Concatenation is basically the opposite of what we just did. In this problem, we have first names and last names, and we want to combine them into a full name. This is a super helpful function that you'll find you use a lot on the job. I literally used this function last week, so it's really important that you pay attention and if you can, work along with me. To concatenate data, all we need is the concat function, so we will do an equal sign and then we'll just type concat. There's also a concatenate, but to be honest, concat is all I ever use on the job, so let's put an open parenthesis. Now, all we have to do is select the data that we want to merge together. So we will select the first name, hit a comma, do the second name, and let's go ahead and try hitting enter. As we can see, this basically worked. The only thing that didn't work is it has LeBron James without a space, and usually when you have a full name, you're probably going to want a space there. Luckily, there is a simple fix to this. If we come back up here to our formula, let's just go ahead and get rid of the last name. So we got rid of G5, which is where James was. And here we're just going to put a double quotes, a space, and then another double quotes. And this tells us that we want this space in between the names. We could put anything right here. We could put a hyphen right here. We could put a middle name here if we wanted, but again, for this kind of problem, a space is all we need. So let's go ahead and insert that last name again. And now you can see this worked. We can go ahead and drag that down. And now we've created a full name column from our first and last name columns. Function number 3 is Format Painter. In this problem, we have this table right here that is formatted just as we'd like, and we want to apply that same exact formatting to this table right here. As you can see, we have this header that is bold, the words are really big, and you also have some orange highlight in there. Obviously, it wouldn't take us too long to go ahead and do that manually over here, but there are some times where it would take some time, but all we need to do this in less than 5 seconds is Format Painter. So all we need to do is select this table right here, And then let's come up here and click on this paintbrush. And as you can see, this is our format painter. So let's click on that. And then now we are going to click and drag over our other table. And now you can see it applied the same exact formatting as we have in our first table. Next is selecting data. Whenever you're working with a really large data set with dozens of columns and tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of rows, selecting all of the data can actually take a lot of time. But luckily, once you get used to a couple of shortcuts, you can speed this up, and what would take sometimes minutes to select a bunch of data, you can do in literally 1 second. So there are actually a few different shortcuts we can do here. If you want to select the whole table, including the column names, you can just select anywhere in the table and then hit Control and A on your keyboard. And that selects literally everything. This isn't really enough data to show you how valuable this is, so let me just jump over to this other data set really quick. So as you can see here, we have a bunch of different columns, and as we can see in here, this count, we have 10,000 rows. So if we wanted to select all of the data in here, as you can see, that's going to take quite a bit of time. So once again, if we want to select the entire table, including column names, we'll just hit Control A, and now we could copy this if we needed to paste it somewhere else. If we want to select all of the column names only, we can select the first column name and hit Control, Shift, Right, and now we've selected all of the column names in our table. Now, and this is something that I have to do all of the time, we want to select all of the data, but not including the column names. All I'm going to do here is I'm going to select this first entry here that isn't a column name, and I'm going to hit Control, Shift, Right, and then down, and then now I can select all of my data, and I often have to copy and paste this somewhere else, and I can copy that, and again, that took less than a second. If your keyboard has an end button, you can actually do this with one less click because you can just do Control, Shift, End. And now you could probably guess this, but if we wanted to just select one column, all we have to do is Control, Shift, and down. And now with all of those shortcuts that I just showed you, it makes it way easier and way quicker to select data, any amount of data that you're trying to work with. All right, moving on, this is actually a bonus function that I didn't include in my top 5 functions that I'm going to show you. I want to show you one other thing that I meant to include in my pivot tables video, but forgot. If you haven't watched that video, I will link it in the description, so be sure to go check that out. But for now, let's go revisit our employees. So we're going to create a pivot table. All we're going to do is select all of the data right here, come up here to Insert, click on Pivot Table, and we want to make sure Add this data to the data model is selected, and we will just create this in a new worksheet. So let's say we want to find the total salary by department. As I showed in the other video, we could just drag department to rows, and we will drag yearly salary to values. Now, the sum of yearly salary, we can see that these executives make a total of $950,000 a year, HR makes a total of $193,000 a year, and so on. But often as data analysts, we don't just want the sums or counts, we want percentages, and there's actually a way to do this very simply. We will just come down here to Values and click this arrow, and then we'll click Value Field Settings. Now all you have to do is click on Show Values As, and we'll come here and select Percentage of Grand Total, hit OK, and now we can see our salary breakdown by department, and as you could guess, this is super useful for a lot of different things you'll do on the job as a data analyst. Sometimes you may want to have both the sum and the percentage, so all you have to do is drag yearly salary to values again, and as you can see, we have our yearly salary here. So we'll say yearly salary sum, and then here I will just do a percentage. So we know that's the percentage of the salary by each department. Now one last thing I'm going to show you. Let me just get rid of both of these for now. Let's say we want to break this down further by the employee name. So we're going to select the employee name here, and then as you can see, we have our departments, and then under them we have our employee names. Let's come over here to yearly salary again, and once again, I'm going to change it to the percentage of grand total. So right now, this is giving us the percentage of the total salary, but we want to look at the percentage of the department salary. And as you can see right here, 20.85 and 23.17 do not equal 100%. All we have to do is come back to our value field settings, come over here to show values as, and instead of percentage of grand total, we are going to select percentage of row total, hit OK. And now we have the percentage of salary by associate under each different department. And again, both of these functions are something I use at least once a week as a data analyst, so I wanted to make sure to show you that right here. Finally, our last function is freezing top row. And once again, I'm going to go back over to that bigger data set so you can actually see this in action. This is another function that is super helpful when you're working with a large data set. Say we are down here looking at our data, but once I scroll down here, I am not able to see our column header, so I really don't know what data I'm looking at. Luckily, there's another simple fix for this. We will just come up here to View. We will click on Freeze Panes over here to the right, and we are going to freeze top row. And now, as you can see, we can scroll down as far as we'd like, and we can still see all of our header names in the top row. This is truly essential when you're working with large data sets, so be sure to take a mental note or a physical note of this, because I can almost promise you'll be using this all the time. And as you can see in this Freeze Panes menu, there's actually a couple of other options, but this Freeze Top Row is all I ever use. Anyway, I hope this video helps. If you want to be a great Excel user, be sure to go check out all of the other videos in my Excel for Beginners playlist. And whether you want to be a data analyst or a Microsoft Excel wizard, I would really appreciate it if you subscribe to my channel. I post a brand new video every single week, helping you become the best data analyst that you can be. And with that, I'll see you next week. If you want to be a great Excel user, you need hands-on experience cleaning data, building visualizations, and presenting data. And in this video, we will complete a project that includes all three. If you're here to get hands-on experience using Excel to build a project, you've come to the right place. This is the last video in my free Microsoft Excel course hosted right here on YouTube, so if you haven't already, be sure to go check out the other videos. Building projects are one of the best ways to learn skills like Microsoft Excel, and projects are also great to throw in a portfolio to show off your skills to recruiters. In this project that we will complete today, you will get hands-on experience completing an ad hoc request, cleaning lifelike dirty data, working in pivot tables, building visualizations, and then building an interactive dashboard. So have a seat, crack your knuckles, and get ready to build. First, a couple very quick notes before we start. First of all, my primary purpose of this video is to help you practice all of the skills that you've learned in this Microsoft Excel course. So while this project could be really great to throw in your portfolio, I just want you to know my main goal is to give you practice using all of these functions you've just learned. And then last, I sometimes take a very scrappy approach to Microsoft Excel, so you may find a better or quicker solution on how to do something. So if you do that, feel free to drop a comment and let me know how you did it. But for me, if something works, it works. So with all of that being said, let's jump right in. First, we're going to take a look at our prompt, and then I'll help you download the data, and then we can jump right into this project. Our scenario here is, you work for a popular freelance marketplace website, and your boss needs a breakdown of 1,000 freelancers on the site, and she wants to review key metrics for each primary skill. At this point, you've already pulled the data from SQL and pasted it into Excel. Now you just have to clean up some of the messy data and present the data in an easily digestible way. So first things first, this data set is linked down in the description, so go click on that link so you can follow along with me. I got this data from Kaggle. If you don't know, Kaggle is one of the best places online to get free data sets, and this is the Global Freelancers Raw data set. Coming down here to look at the description, this dataset contains 1,000 fictional freelance profiles from around the world designed to reflect realistic variability and messiness often encountered in real-world data collection. And then we'll look at this in more detail once we open this in Excel, but as you can see, we have a bunch of different variables including ID, name, gender, age, country, language, and so on. So at this point, all you need to do is come up here and click download. If you don't have a Kaggle profile, I think it makes you create a free Kaggle profile, so go ahead and do that. And once that is done, you can go ahead and download the data. And once you click download, I just downloaded via Kaggle Hub, and I downloaded the data set as a zip, and within that zip, it should open as a CSV file. So once you have the data downloaded, it should look like this, but honestly, I don't like working out of a CSV file because I've noticed they just kind of behave weirdly sometimes, so I'm gonna just paste this into another Excel file. So all I'm gonna do is come up here and select all of the data by clicking on this little triangle. I'm gonna hit Control C to copy, and then I open my new Excel spreadsheet, and I'm just gonna hit Control V to paste all of this data. So now I have all of this in an Excel file. The last thing I recommend you do before we jump right in is go ahead and save this to your computer. I saved this as Freelancer Project. You can call it whatever you want to. And then make sure either Excel automatically saves your work as you go, or you just want to save your work every few minutes, just that way in case your computer crashed or something, you don't lose all of the work that you've done. Alright, let's take a look at this data. I'm going to hit this triangle again and then double click right here between the columns, and that auto formats the width of these columns so I can see it. So now taking a look at all of our columns here, we can see that we have the freelancer ID, we have the name, we have the gender, we have the age, country, language, primary skill, and if you remember from our prompt, that's going to be one of the important ones, years of experience, hourly wage, rating, is active, and client satisfaction. And since we opened this file, you're probably already seeing some dirty data, like this gender column looks pretty wacky. If we come over here to this hourly rate, we see a bunch of different formats here. For is active, some are in, some are ones and zeros, some are true and false. So as you can see, we have some good data cleaning to do, and this data cleaning that we're about to do in this project is just like data cleaning that I've done on the job as a data analyst. So let's go through each of these columns one by one and inspect them and see if there needs to be any cleaning done. Whenever you're working on the job, you probably won't have to go through every single column. You'll probably know the data well enough to know which columns need cleaned, but we're just going to do our due diligence here and go review each column. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to open up the sorting and filtering, and I'm going to come down here and just see if there are any issues in this ID column. And at least for this column, it looks like everything is pretty standard, so I'm not worried here. One thing that you got to look out for whenever you're working as a data analyst is duplicates in your data. And to review for duplicates, I'm just going to select this column A. I'm going to come up here to conditional formatting, highlight sales rules, and then duplicate values, and we'll just fill this with dark red text. So I'm just going to kind of honestly take a little scroll down and see if I see any red. Again, this is scrappy. There are better ways to do this, but sometimes this is just how I go about things. And as we can see in all 1,000 rows of our data, we don't have any duplicates, at least seemingly. And then kind of just as due diligence, I'm going to select this column A, come over to the data tab, and I'm going to hit this remove duplicates button and then select continue with the current selection, remove duplicates, column A, and as we can see, no duplicates are found, so we are good with column A. So the second column, name, is where we potentially get into some issues. As we can see, instead of just having the first and last name, we have some that have the title, so we have a miss here. We can see that some people have their title after their name, so DDS, I think that's a dentist right there. As we can see, we have a doctor, we have a Mr., we have another dentist. I guess dentists are well populated in this data set, so for me, I don't really worry about this title at the end of the name, but I want to take out all of the Mr., Mrs., and doctors, so that's what we're going to do. So the first thing I'm going to do is right-click on the column after name, and I'm going to insert a new column. We will just call this full name. And so this way we don't confuse these. I'm going to put underscore raw right here just to know that is the raw data column, and this is going to be the clean data column. Now I'm going to open up the sorting and filtering again, and because I just want to get out the Mr., Mrs., and doctors, I'm going to search for dot and then a space, and that should filter me through all of the Mr., Mrs., and doctors, so that looks good to me, so let's go ahead and hit OK. And to clean these, I'm going to actually use a formula we haven't looked at in this course, but again, that's one of the things about Excel. Once you know the basics, you can use YouTube or ChatGPT to figure out new things. So I'm going to use the text after formula, so we will do an equal sign like when we start any formula, and then we'll type text after, and then an open parenthesis. And so the first argument for this is we want to select the data we're cleaning, comma. Next, in double quotes, we want to choose our delimiter. So this formula is going to pull in just the text after this delimiter, and we want the text after the period and then the space. It's important to include the space here because if not, it will put a space at the beginning of each of these names. So then we'll close our quotes, hit another comma, close our parentheses, and hit enter. And as you can see, that worked like a charm. So let's go ahead and bring this down. And now we have all of these names pulled over into full name. So now let me undo my sort, and then I'm going to click here and sort again. And I'm going to unselect all, and then I'm going to choose just the blanks because these names that are already in this column we've already dealt with. And then for the rest of these, I'm just going to do equals and then pull in the name. And that just pulls the rest of these over, easy like that, and I'm going to go ahead and drag down. I could also just double click on the bottom corner to drag down, but if I'm working in a small data set, I usually will just drag it down like that. I guess I'm old school. And now that we've done that, we are completely good on the name column. So this one we're going to have some fun with. If we come up here and search, we can see that we have F, female, M, and male. And if we go down, we see we have different versions of capitalization. So this is some good practice for data standardization, which is really important as a data analyst or any Excel user. So just like before, I'm going to go ahead and create a new column. And then there's different ways that we can deal with this. I'm actually going to use kind of a complex nested formula here, but we're going to build this one piece at a time so you can see what I'm doing. So the good thing about this data, we don't have man and woman in here or any other variation of that. Everything here starts with an F or an M, so that's what we're going to use to our advantage. So I'm going to use the left formula that we learned about during the course, and I'm going to pull this in, hit a comma, and then I just want to pull the left character. So I only want to pull in the first character, which here should be F. So as we can see, if we pull this down, we could really stop right here about because we can already tell which ones are F for female or M for male, but we aren't going to stop there. We also have this capitalization issue because some of these are capitalized, some of these aren't, and we want to standardize all of these so they're all either capital or lowercase, and I'm going to choose lowercase. And to do this, I'm just going to come up here to this function, and I'm going to add lower and a parentheses around this. And in case you don't know, lower just makes every character in a string of text lowercase, so that's really good for data standardization. And if we pull that back down to these 3 cells, we can see that it turned this middle one from a capital F to a lowercase f. However, I'm a little bit more particular with what I want. I do still want to output female or male, so last I'm going to add an if function to this. So I added this if function to this, so I put equals if around everything. I did new parentheses, so let me walk you through really quick what this does. This says if the lowercase of the left character equals F, then we want to output female. And then if it doesn't equal F, which for us would mean that it would equal M, we want it to output male. So this is going to make it where now we have all of the data standardized, and if we pull this down, we can see that everything is going to equal male or female and look really good. So I went ahead and dragged that down. Let me go ahead and unfilter. I'm going to call this the gender column. We will put that underscore raw here just so we know that this is the raw data, not the data we're going to work with later, and we're good to go. Next, let's come over here and look at our age column. If we go ahead and filter, this one actually looks really good. We have some blanks, so the only issue here is whether or not we want to deal with the blanks. Let's go ahead and unselect all of this data. Let's choose the blanks and see what we're working with. Okay, so as we can see, we have 30 blanks in our data. It says 31 down here, but that also includes this header. And how you deal with blanks really has to do with your business knowledge, because there may be some times that if you're working with a column that you would take the average of, so you're probably not going to take the average of age, you might want to input the average here. But to be honest, whenever I'm working, if I have some blanks in my data, unless I have a good reason to do something with them, I usually just leave them be and I will just acknowledge that sometimes in your data you're going to have blanks, especially when that data is inputted by somebody, which a lot of data is. So for this problem, I don't really care that some people don't have their age listed. I'm just going to leave that be. Coming over here to country, let's take a look at this. As we can see, we have different countries. I don't see any duplicate countries or anything like that or misspelling. So this column looks perfect, so we can just move on. Same thing over here for language. Let's just take a look at all of the different languages we have here. Again, everything looks really well formatted in this column, so we are all good there as well. Next is primary skill, and if we remember from our prompt, this is probably our most important column, so let's make sure everything looks good here. And again, we're lucky here, everything looks good and we don't need to do anything. All right, we're getting close to the end. Coming over here to years of experience, let's pull this down. Again, this looks pretty good. We do have some blanks in here, but again, I don't worry about the blanks. I can filter out for those later if I want. But again, if you're looking at a data set, you're going to have blanks, and I don't think you need to ignore all the other data just because you have blanks in one column. So this column looks good, but I'm actually going to do something a little extra here. I'm going to create a new column, and I want to create buckets here so that years of experience, if I want to create a chart with that later, there aren't going to be like 50 or 100 entries for every age. I want to create buckets to make it go from 0 to 5 years of experience, 6 to 10 years of experience, 11 to 15, 15 to 20, and then over 20 years. So we just called this experience buckets. Whenever you're working with data like this, where there are just so many entries, there's really not a lot that you can gain from that, but by putting this kind of data into buckets, it makes it a little bit more usable. And when we create a chart with this later, you'll see kind of how this helped us. Okay, so I have the formula that I'm going to use here, and I'm going to walk you through this. This is also right here if you just need to pause and paste it in, because I know this is going to be a little bit complicated for some people, but don't worry, you'll get it. And also, just as a heads up, whenever I do some kind of formula like this, you can just click on the bottom of this bar and drag it down. So with that being said, let me just tell you what this does. This is the ifs formula, so just like that if that we used earlier on the gender column. So this formula basically says if this first condition is true, we want this output, and then if it isn't true, it jumps to the next line, and then it just keeps going down. So we're saying if J2, which is our years of experience cell, our first cell of this data, is less than or equal to 5, we want to output 0 to 5. If J2 is less than or equal to 10, we want to output 6 to 10. And so on, and then once we get to the end, if J2 is greater than 20, we are just going to output 21 plus. So if we hit enter, we now can see that we have these buckets. Let's look at a few of these to make sure it worked. These are 21 plus, this is 0 to 5, this one's 21 plus, another 11 to 15, so this works. So I went ahead and dragged that down. Now I'm going to pull this bar back to the top so we can see what we're working with. And again, if we're trying to model all of this data, if we wanted to build a bar chart for this data, we're going to have like 70 bars in this. But by splitting it into these 5 buckets, now we're only going to have 5 bars in that chart, which makes this a lot more digestible. Now moving on to our hourly rate column, if we go ahead and filter for this, we are going to see that we have some very non-standard data. Some of them have dollar signs, some of the numbers don't have dollar signs, and then we also have this USD 100, 20, 30, and so on. So we're going to go ahead and create a new column to clean this again. Again, I'm going to go ahead and put underscore raw here so we know that's the raw data. We will call this new one hourly rate. And then we're just going to take these issues one at a time here. So first of all, we are going to select all of the data that has a dollar sign in it and hit OK. And to clean these, I'm just going to use the substitute function. So we'll do equal and then substitute. And basically this one's really cool because we can just substitute a character or several characters with other single character or multiple characters. So we are going to choose the text that we're cleaning. And then in double quotes, we are going to select the dollar sign because that's what we want to get rid of, and then hit a comma. And then we want literally nothing there, so we're just going to hit double quotes and double quotes because we want to replace it with nothing, and then we're going to close our parentheses and hit enter. So as we could see, that cleaned it perfectly, and now we have all of these numbers without the dollar sign. So now that we've done those, now we are going to search for USD, and we are going to filter for these. So to clean these USDs, I'm going to use that text after formula here because every one of these has USD and then a space, then the number. So we're going to use text after. We're going to select our data, hit a comma, and then our delimiter here will be a space. We'll do double quotes, space, double quote, close our parentheses, and that will pull in everything after that space. And then I'm just going to go ahead and drag this down. And then the last thing I'm going to filter for are these numbers that are already formatted correctly. And again, you may have a cleaner or quicker way to do this. I just get scrappy. Whenever I'm not trying to explain this is really quick to do anyway, and I just want to get something that works. And for the rest of these, I'm just going to pull the things straight over. I'm going to pull the numbers straight over just by using the equal and then clicking on the cell. And then the last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to change the format of this to a number. And we're getting some errors because of inconsistent formulas, but I'm not going to worry about that for now. We will come back if that causes us issues later. And then I'm also going to get rid of these decimal places. Now that we're finally done with that column, let's come over here and check our rating. And everything looks pretty standard here other than some blanks, so we will leave that be. Next is this is active column. So as we can see, we have a bunch of different binaries for whether someone is active or not. We have 0, 1, we have YN, we have yes, no, and we also have true, false. And this one I'm just going to clean manually. So let's go ahead and create yet another column. So we'll say is active, we'll do raw. And I'll actually just call this one status rather than is active because I like that a little bit better. And then just to do this really quick, first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to select 0, in, no, and false. So I'm selecting all of the entries that basically equal false, and I'm going to hit OK. And here I'm going to type not active, and then I'm going to pull this down. Now, same thing, I'm going to come in here and get all of the yeses or trues. Let's make sure I don't skip one. And that looks pretty good to me. Hit OK. And here I'm going to type active. And then I'm going to pull this down. And again, that may seem like a scrappy approach, but now I have active, not active, and then there's some blanks in here too, but at least for now, I'm not going to worry about that. Last is this client satisfaction column. And if we look in here, we can see we have some percents and some not. So we're going to go ahead and clean this one. And we don't need to create a new column this time because we're at the end anyway. And we'll call this one customer satisfaction. And as always, I like to make sure it's clear which ones are the raw data. So we're going to go ahead and format this as a percentage. And first, I'm going to select all of the percentages, and I'm going to deselect all of the ones that aren't. And this will take me just like 15 seconds or so. Again, there's sometimes better ways to do things, but I would rather just go ahead and get it done than spend 5 minutes YouTubing or Googling to get it done. So let's go ahead and skip to the end of this. So now that I've unselected all of the numbers without the percent sign and unselected the blanks, I'm going to hit OK. And here I'm just going to pull these over with the equal sign. So now that I've worked with all of these percentages, I'm going to unselect all, and now I'm going to go down and I'm going to select just the numbers that don't have a percentage. And let's go ahead and skip to after I've done this. So now that I've selected all of these numbers, I'm going to hit OK. So if I just pulled these over like this, since I have this formatted as a percentage, it takes this 92 that we know means 92%, but it thinks that 92 is like an actual 92. So whenever you get to a percentage, you multiply a whole number by 100 to get what it would be in a percentage. So like 5 would be 500, so 92 equals 9200%. So what we got to do here is, and I'll just start from scratch, is we're going to do equal, and then we are going to hit the cell that we're working with, and then we're just going to divide this by 100 to get what we're looking for. So now that we've done that, we can just drag this all of the way down, and now we'll have all of our numbers in terms of percentages. And again, it's kind of yelling at me right now for this inconsistent formula, but I'm not going to worry about that for now. We'll just hope that doesn't hurt us. And then the last thing that I sometimes like to do is clean up the column names if I'm going to be sending this data out to someone just so they can see the data a little bit more clear. So we'll call this freelancer ID. I'm going to hide this column because we're not going to use it, and I don't want to confuse someone that's looking at it. We will hide this old gender column as well, and I'm just right-clicking, or I'm right-clicking on the column to do that. We have gender. We'll just give this a capitalization. We'll capitalize if it will type an M or an N. I don't know why my keyboard does that sometimes. It doesn't want to type an N. Language. Primary skill. And you don't have to do this. This is just something that I often do. Years of experience, and we are going to keep this. So years of experience. Experience buckets, we will go ahead and right click and hide this column because we're not going to need it. Hourly rate, rating, we will go ahead and capitalize this. We aren't going to use this is active. Well, I accidentally created a new column, so we will hide this. Status looks good. Client satisfaction, we aren't going to need this one. And now we're a little bit more polished, so we're good to go. So we're finally ready to dig into this data and then start working on our dashboard. But before we create additional tabs, I'm going to go ahead and rename this one Data. To start this off, I'm going to be using one of the most popular and most used Excel functions by data analysts, and that is pivot tables. So I'm going to select this triangle again. As you know, I love this triangle. I'm going to come up here to Insert. I'm going to hit Pivot Table, and I want to make sure Add This to the Data Model is selected, and I'm going to create this in a new worksheet. And again, before we get started, I just like to stay organized, so I'm going to call this Pivots. So here with pivot tables, this is a great place to start playing around with the data and looking at what we've got. And we're also going to use this as a launching point to create some of our visualizations for our dashboard. So I'm going to pull this freelancer ID into values so we can see we have 1,000 freelancers. And then I can pull anything else over here into rows and look at how many of each of those things that we have. So if I pull gender right here, we can see that we have 510 male, 490 female. I could come down here, select this arrow, select value field settings, show value as, and I could do percentage of grand total, and then now I can see the percentage of male and female. And at least for now, I'm going to take that off. And honestly, gender isn't that interesting to me here, so I'm going to focus more on interesting columns that my boss may actually want to do, because I don't think whether someone's male or female is really going to change a lot of what we're doing. And I want to make something clear right now. Before I recorded this video, I've already built this project just so I knew where I was going. In general, whenever you're working on a project like this, you're going to take longer than I've taken in this video because you're going to be trying a lot of things, seeing what works, what doesn't, but we'll be moving a little bit more quicker in this video because I already know where I'm going with this. So I'm going to actually unselect this, and I'm going to look at rating. That's something I'm definitely going to be interested in. I'm going to come to value field settings, and I want to look at the average rating. I'm going to select this number right here, and I do not want all of these decimal places. I will keep 2 just in case there is a close difference on ratings in a bit. So I'll have 2 decimal places to see that difference. And this is the only thing we're going to actually break down by primary skill, but I'm going to pull primary skill into rows, so that way we can see the average rating by primary skill. And if you right click on one of these numbers, you can come here to sort largest to smallest. This is always a great practice, so that way you can see what's the best rating, or what's the lowest rating, or the highest or lowest of whatever you're working with. So that's great for me. So I'm just going to copy this pivot table, and I'm going to paste a new one right here. This is just often what I do, and I'm going to get rid of these, and I'm going to kind of start from scratch. So once again, I'm going to select the freelancer IDs, our values. Usually when I'm working with pivot tables, my value is going to be something. My value is going to be some kind of ID. And again, I want to get these stupid decimal places off here. And I want to look at the experience buckets for these. And then for this one, I actually am more interested in looking at the percentages because I'd rather see the breakdown than this number. So I'll do a percentage of grand total, hit enter. Now I have this. Yay, more decimal places. Thank you, Microsoft Excel. So here is an interesting thing when it comes to sorting. So if I wanted to, I could come sort by largest to smallest, but what if I want to sort by these numbers on the left instead? If I come up here and sort, it's going to try to do this based on whatever the first character is, but I don't want to go 0 to 5, and since this one starts with a 1, it thinks that is next because this 1 is better than this 6, and all of these are better than the 6 over 10. And again, this is just not in order, so I want to do something to fix it. One solution could be in that if function that we did earlier. Let me go back to that. If I pulled this down, I could just number all of these like this, so that way it would pull in kind of alphabetically, but even though I've done this before, I'm going to show you something else that's a little bit quicker and cleaner so we don't have just random numbers in there than doing this. So you can actually select one of these cells, and then if you come right here to whenever you get these kind of crosshairs icon, you can select and then you can manually sort. And that's just what I'm going to do here today because that's just the easiest thing. And now I just had to pull that up to the second place, and now this is in order, and I like how this is looking, so I'm going to leave this as is. So let's go ahead and copy this over. We'll go ahead and adjust these columns. I'm going to get rid of experience buckets. And the next thing I want to look at is hourly rate. So I'm going to pull that into the rows. So this hourly rate, I do have these blanks here, but I'm going to leave these in the data because later whenever I add slicers to our presentation or our dashboard, if I get rid of this blank, it will make it where I can't interact with that chart. So I'm just going to leave it in here, but I am going to go ahead and select, right click, and sort A to Z. And as we can see, we have that same issue as before, but again, it's just easier for me if I just go ahead and filter by pulling down. So we'll put 100 there. Actually, we'll filter going the other way. So we'll put 100 first. We'll put 75 second. And again, this is taking longer than it needs to. I probably could have sorted a little bit differently to be quicker, but we'll go ahead and jump to the end. But again, we're just dragging these one by one up here to the top. And now we have what we need. As we can see for hourly rates, 15.7% of people are charging $100 an hour, 13.4% of people are charging $75 an hour, and so on. And since we have just a bunch of zeros at the end, I'm going to get rid of that last decimal place. Honestly, I don't even want that decimal place, so I'm just going to get rid of the decimal altogether. Cool, so now that we are done with that, I'm going to come over here and copy one of these again. I'm going to paste it here. And let's get rid of these numbers. So next, just to see if there's any variation here, I'm going to come and find primary skill, and I'm going to pull that into rows, and then I'm going to look at the customer satisfaction, and then I am going to take the average of this. And now if I sort, we can look at this customer satisfaction. However, we have a very low variance here. It just goes from 78% to 80%. So honestly, that just doesn't really interest me that much. So I'm honestly just not going to even use that. So instead of that, I think the last couple of things that I'm going to want on my dashboard is I want to look at the number of people from each language or from each country, as well as the number of people who speak each language. So let's first pull language over here, and then we will pull in freelancer ID, and that's going to give us a count. Let's go ahead and get rid of those decimal places. Let's go ahead and right click and sort. That looks good to me. Let's just go ahead and copy this over. Let's get rid of language. Let's add country. And a lot of what I'm doing right here will make sense once you see how we're going to create this dashboard. So let's go ahead and sort this from greatest to lowest. And now we have everything broken down that we're going to include as a chart on our dashboard. So I'm going to go ahead and create a new tab right here, and I will just call this I'll just call it dashboard. Dashboard. I'll right click right here to make sure we know this is the tab we want to look at. I'm going to highlight it green so they're like, okay, I'm in the wrong place. I need to come over here to the dashboard and look here. So here is one of the coolest things about working with pivot tables, especially if you ever want to create some kind of dashboard. So honestly, a lot of the time whenever I've done ad hoc data requests, I will just present data in pivot tables, maybe include a chart. So for a lot of data asks you'll do as a data analyst, you might be fine just doing what I've done here, maybe changing the titles right here, maybe adding a little bit of text. This could be good enough on its own, but we're going to kind of be a little fancy today and create a full dashboard. And the cool thing to do that is if we just click on one of our pivot tables, let's come up here and select Pivot Table Analyze, and we're going to select a pivot chart. And all we're going to have to do is we'll choose whatever chart we want. So you could do a column chart, pie chart, bar chart, line chart, area chart, or all of these other charts. But to be honest, the vast majority of the time, probably 98% of the time, I'm going to use a column or a bar chart. I'll occasionally do a line chart if I'm looking at time series data. And then occasionally, if we had included gender on our dashboard, I might have used a pie chart for gender because we would have just been looking at two things. But whenever you have this many things, it is impossible to get any information from this. So I'm just going to choose the clustered column chart. So this just pastes in right here, and I'm going to hit Control X to cut, and then I'm going to go ahead and paste it over here on our dashboard. And I'm going to format this later. I'm going to kind of just make this smaller for now so I can paste other things, but I'm going to leave that right there and we'll come back later. Now for years of experience, I'm going to do the exact same thing. Let's come up here and select our pivot chart, and I'm going to do another clustered column. Let's go ahead and Control X cut, Control V paste, Control V paste because I needed to select somewhere to paste. And again, I'm doing everything super cleanly, like I know what I'm going to be doing because I do know what I'm going to be doing. Whenever you're building a dashboard of any kind, you're going to do a lot of playing around. And whenever I initially built this project, because I wanted to make sure I knew what I was doing before making this video, I spent a lot longer on this than I'm spending right now. So once you're working on the job and building a dashboard, don't freak out if you don't know exactly what you want to do. I would say trial and error is a really big part of working here. Now we have hourly pay right here. Just because it's a little bit confusing, I'm just going to remind us what each of these is. Years of experience. The other ones are kind of obvious, but these where they're just numbers aren't as obvious. So I'm going to select some of my data. I just got to click anywhere in here, Pivot Table Analyze, Pivot Chart, and I'm going to choose this one again. We will Control X to cut it. We'll select in here to paste it. And again, we are going to worry about formatting all of this in a minute, so I'm not that worried about this right now. And then for these last two, again, I already know where we're kind of going with this, so I'm going to select a bar chart for this. Control X, Control V, and then coming back here to country, we're going to do the same thing, pivot chart, bar chart, select, copy, or actually cut, Control X, and paste. Okay, so we have all of our visuals in here right now that we're going to do, but we have two more things that we want to look at. If we come back over here to our prompt from earlier, our boss wants to review key metrics for each primary skill. So that kind of clues me in, and I could even ask questions if this was a real scenario about what she wants. But this tells me that we want a slicer so she can select each primary skill and then look at all of that data that we had pulled for that skill specifically. So to create a slicer, all we need to do is select one of our charts, and we also could have done this with our pivot tables. Come up here to Pivot Chart Analyze, and hit Insert Slicer, and then we are going to select Primary Skill. So if we go ahead and try to play around with this, whenever we click something, we can see that it's working for the chart we've selected, but it's not working for all of the other charts. So let's go ahead and clear our filter here, and all we have to do is right-click here, and then we're going to click Report Connections, and then here we're just going to select all of the things that we want to filter, and we want to filter for all of our data. It's referring to our pivot tables, but whenever you manipulate the pivot tables on the other sheet, it manipulates the charts on this sheet. So we want to select them all and hit OK. And then now, if we play around with this, we can see that it is affecting every chart on here, which is exactly what we want. So let's go ahead and shrink that down a little bit, and then we're going to create one other slicer. So let's come up here and insert a slicer. And the only other thing that it wasn't explicitly asked for, but me as a data analyst with my business knowledge, I think there might be a circumstance that we just want to look at active people, or maybe we want to look at inactive freelancers. So we're going to create another one just for status. And again, we need to right click and select all of our connections and hit OK. Cool, so this is looking pretty good. Now we have everything on here that we are wanting to include. So at this point, we're just going to be working on some formatting, which is pretty important. But again, honestly, whenever I'm working in Excel, I try to be a little bit scrappier. So don't worry if everything doesn't line up perfectly. I'm actually going to be a little bit fancy with this dashboard. I'm going to select all of the cells. I'm going to come over here to view, and then I'm going to get rid of grid lines. Now I'm going to select this all again. I'm going to come here to our fill color, and I'm going to make this all a gray, so that way it just makes all of these charts pop a little bit more. So let's try to make this one a little bit longer. We just want to make it where you can see a few of the different options. We have this scroller right here someone can scroll to if they want to. But that looks pretty good to me. Maybe we'll throw this here. We'll definitely do some resizing. Let's come over here to this other one. And something I like to do sometimes, and again, this is a little bit extra, is if you really want things to be the same size, you can kind of just line one thing on top of the other. And that's pretty close. So we'll put this right here. Let's see if we can line that up at least a little bit. There we go. That looks pretty good to me. And then I'm just kind of moving stuff around to get to what I need to. Right here's the years of experience, and we'll work on renaming this in a little bit. We'll go ahead and place this right there. This rating is probably one of the things we're going to look at more, so I'm going to put it up here right next to this filter because rating is very important. We want to know how good our freelancers are doing. We'll pull this over some to give us a little bit more space. And then this is cluttering it a little bit because it has the extra decimal places. So let me declutter this a little bit. So I'm going to come back over here to our pivot table. Let's come right here. And let's remove one decimal place from this. And as we can see, it adjusted right here. We also aren't going to use these filters. So when you create these charts from pivot tables, it automatically comes with these filters, but we have a slicer right over here, so we don't need this. So I'm just gonna right click and I'm gonna put remove all filled buttons from charts. And that makes it where we have a little bit more space to see what we're working with. Then we have this hourly pay right here. We will just, again, doesn't have to be perfect, but we'll do our best. We'll make it go to about the end of this thing here and also to the bottom there. That looks pretty good to me. And now we're just going to use these countries. And the reason I'd made this a bar chart, again, this is something that I found out by playing around with this beforehand. Okay, my Excel's being weird. We'll give that a minute. So my Excel actually just crashed, so that was fun. That's just something that happens occasionally, especially when I'm running a screen recorder at the same time. That's why we want to save. Let's delete this, but I'm going to use these countries right here. And as I was about to say, the reason that I'd made this a bar chart is from playing around before, I kind of knew exactly how I wanted this to look. Since there are so many countries, I just wanted to pull that right here so you could see all of these countries pretty clearly. And now we're going to do the same thing. If I can get a place to kind of resize this a little bit, we're going to do the same thing for the languages. Sweet. So if we look at this right now, this is looking pretty solid. Like I'm very happy with how this is looking, other than all of these just saying total. So let's make this look a lot prettier. So the first thing is, I just personally don't want to have filters for everything on here. And again, these have filters for each one of these charts. So for all of these, I'm just going to right click and hide all filled buttons on charts. And that will give us that'll give us some more space. Cool. And then next, I want to format all of these different titles. So this one is called primary skill. And if I can select that, we're going to make this bold. This one is years of experience. Oh, wait. This one's actually rating. You probably were screaming at your computer. This one is years of experience. We'll make this bold. We'll go ahead and make this bold. And this one is hourly wage, I think is what we called. Or we'll call this hourly rate. That's a little bit better. Next, this is a count by country. We'll make this bold. Again, it's usually easier if I just hit bold before. And this one is a count by language. Cool, and I wanted to make sure to clarify that these were counts because some of these we were breaking down percentage-wise, where these we were getting total counts, and I just didn't want to confuse anybody. All right, so the last thing that I know I'm gonna do is I want to change the color of these. This may be a little bit extra. Actually, I can even just do this at home. So I'm just gonna select these bars. And honestly, I am just going to select green here. I like using green for a lot of things. And then if something is red, I can change it to red. But green is a good number. It makes it pop on here really well. And all I have to do is select these bars and then come up here and hit fill. And sometimes it looks like one of these isn't selected. Like it looks like Brazil isn't selected here. But if it automatically selects all of these, you don't need to worry about it because it does know. And then we'll make that green. And with all of that being said, I'm gonna go ahead and say this looks pretty good. Let's do one last look. So we have our primary skill slicer, we have our status slicer, we have rating, and this looks pretty good to me. Okay, one last thing I did forget is I usually like to have data labels on here. So I'm actually gonna add data labels, and then we know this is total, even though it's really the average rating. So I'm actually, again, you just find some things as you're working. So let's call this average rating. And then again, we are going to get rid of this legend because we really don't need it. And that gives us a little bit more space again. And same thing over here. Let's go ahead and add data label. So that way we can see the exact number for each one of these. Let's get rid of our legend. Over here, let's do the same thing. Get rid of legend, add data labels. Over here, get rid of legend, add data labels. Or not a data table, data labels. Same thing right here. Get rid of this legend. There's obviously really good times to have legends sometimes, but for this, everything's kind of self-explanatory. So getting rid of that legend, that gives us a lot more space with everything. And now I really am liking how this is looking. Let's make sure everything is interacting with our slicers. This looks so good to me. Like a stakeholder would be so happy if this is how you presented data. And if we look at our blank statuses, here are our active statuses, and then not active, and we'll go ahead and clear that. And this looks great, and if you worked along with me, great job building this project. I'm gonna go ahead and save this and make sure it's saved. Again, it's auto-saving right here, but this is looking so good to me, so I'm gonna go ahead and call it a day, so I will see you in just a second. If you are still watching this video and if you built that project along with me, thank you so much for watching and I hope you got a lot out of this video. I just can't emphasize enough, A, how important building a project is to learning a skill, and then B, how important it is to build a portfolio if you're trying to land a data analyst job. So if you worked along with me, you definitely achieved both of those goals. And if you found this video valuable, I would really appreciate it if you shared this with a friend, if you shared this on your LinkedIn. I put so much prep into this video and I had so much footage to edit through. So if you found this valuable, hopefully someone else would also find it valuable. So I'd really appreciate any shares. Feel free to comment down below if you would have done something different, if you liked this kind of video and want me to do more in the future, and I will make sure to read all of the comments. And if you want to be a data analyst or a great Excel user, I would really appreciate it if you subscribe to my channel. I post a brand new video every single week helping you become the best data analyst that you can be. And with that, I'll see you next week.